Like the fire, feel the beat. Gday Gridiron can't be beat. Nick your knee and bring the heat. Brad's the MVP elite. From the outback through the field, we got tackles hard to steal. Catch the passes, make it real. Gridiron warriors never kneel. G'day Gridiron, down under and beyond. G'day Gridiron, yeah, the podcast come on strong.
G'day Aussie Gridiron fans, and welcome to the Aussie Gridiron Network. This is the G'day Gridiron podcast, and you are back with us for the Week 13 game previews. Week 13, Lucky 13. None of this hocus pocus nonsense. It's Thanksgiving week in the US, so there is a huge amount of games spread across an entire week of football between NFL and college games. It is a football lover's dream. We have, for the first time ever, a all G'day Gridiron 4-man box here. All the boys are in the house. Isaac, Brad, Nick, how are we going, boys? This is sensational.
Beautiful. As the resident North American, I will say Thanksgiving is an amazing. It's my favorite holiday for the year, so I love it. It's the only time I really miss being in America. But we got football, so all is well. I just need my wife to make me some pumpkin pie, and I'll be home and hosed.
Oh, pumpkin pie, Brad. I could never get into that. I love the fact that the holiday you love the most revolves around football, drinking, and food.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm not seeing the problem with that.
You understand that you're closer to being Australian than you realise?
Yeah. Every weekend's Thanksgiving in Australia.
Correct. And sometimes midweek as well.
That's right.
Depends on the day.
That's right.
All right, boys. We, of course, have some game previews to go through. We've got some bloody best bets, and we're going to start the show today with a little bit of talk on coaches on the hot seat. We're going to run through all 32 current head coaches and have a bit of a chat to see who might be on the hot seat right now or even just at the end of the season, or whether some of these guys are basically Fort Knox. So I've preemptively ranked some of these guys into some tiers, and those tiers are basically Fort Knox, self-explanatory really, it is safe as, needs to watch their back, Bill is out there, or sometimes it might be Mike is out there if you're talking about Vrabel, getting warm, so end of season results may decide their fate, and totally boned, time for an early Thanksgiving vacation. Or extended Thanksgiving vacation as it would be after this week. So what I figure we're going to do, boys, is I'll just read through who I've got in these tiers. You boys can chuck up your hands, give me a L if you want to chat about any of these guys. If you want to move them up or down, we can do that in a discussion, have a quick discussion. We can move them up or down the tiers if you think so. But, yeah, let's get on with going through these tiers then, eh? All right, Fort Knox. I'm just going to start from the top with some of the most obvious ones in the NFL of these 32 head coaches. Jonathan Gannon, Raheem Morris, John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott, Sean Payton, Dan Campbell, Matt LaFleur. Is everyone cool up to that point?
Absolutely. You can't get any more secure than those guys.
Yeah, I've got McDermott maybe getting a little warm, playoff dependent on what's going on.
You reckon?
All right. Okay.
Yeah,
What,
McDermott.
At 9-2, Isaac.
Yeah, well, you seen last year he was a bit. Once they did the OC change, it just suddenly come good. So there was a little bit of talk then that he might be on the hot seat. So if they get bounced in the first round of the playoffs this year, the seat will be getting really warm.
Good point.
Yeah. I think that you bring up a valid point that if there was a catastrophe in the playoffs, I could see that. I would say right now they're fine, but I think he has that potential. So I can. Depends on how you look at it, but yeah.
Just out of curiosity as well, the Fort Knox is pretty much secure. Just to confirm.
That's what I'm basically saying. Yeah, mate. Yeah.
I'm assuming
Knox.
that you've forgotten Andy Reid through all of that. You're not
No,
putting him on another level.
I haven't got that far yet, mate. There's a lot in Fort Knox, essentially, and which there should be, because the reality is that at the end of any season, we're probably due to lose 6 to 8 coaches. So the majority of these 32 jobs are going to be pretty secure. So we'll keep going with Fort Knox. So Matt LaFleur, D'Amico Ryans, Shane Steichen, Andy Reid. No way I was forgetting Andy, mate. We all good with those ones?
Yep.
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, Kevin O'Connell, Gerard Mayo.
All good.
I would say Mayo's secure just because he's so new and they've shown flashes, but I wouldn't say he's got a seatbelt on type secure. He's in the chair right now.
I would figure that with Mayo, it's more of like they already knew what they were getting into when they put Mayo in the spot, and they specifically said, as in the Patriots, that they were grooming Mayo through the whole bit to be a head coach anyway.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I would think that they know that this year was probably not going to be the greatest year, and there's going to be some building coming into that anyway.
And I doubt the owner, Kraft, is going to make any rash decisions after, having his last coach there for so long. I don't think he's wanted to make quick changes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last 4 there. I've got Nick Sirianni, Mike Tomlin, Mike McDonald, the Seahawks, and Dan Quinn.
Nah, I got to throw the flag on Nick Sirianni. Hang on.
Me too.
I'm
with Nick there.
This is a guy that 2 months ago we said, yeah, he's done, definitely. This is a guy that was shouting at fans. Their work isn't done yet. They, although have had a good season so far, again, it could be a case of if they get bounced out in the first round, they've got, if they face like the Packers, potentially the Cardinals or the Commanders or something like that, if they drop a game like that, which they should win at home, he's 100% on the hot seat, considering they've now paid Jalen Hurts. Saquon's had close to an MVP year. It's not like last year where they just sort of fell off the cliff. Everyone can see now that was an anomaly. So now if they come out and they lose in the first round, they were planning on sacking him earlier in the year. So they've had this good run, and if it results in the first round exit, he's definitely was the next career. Watch your back for sure.
Yeah, I agree with Nick. Sirianni's getting warm for me. They started the last season 10-1 and then lost 6 of their last 7, or went 6-7, including that playoff loss. So yeah, I reckon they weren't playing that well in the first 3 to 4 weeks, and they were ready to get rid of him.
Yeah, you guys bring up a good point. I could see that. So I would be, and it's Philly. No, is anybody really ever secure in Philly? So yeah, I don't want to rehash the old tired. They threw batteries at Santa, but they did.
But they did. They did.
Yeah. So Philly is its own animal. So yeah, I could see him in the watch your back. I would love to see him implode and start swinging at a fan or something like that. I mean, that would be great TV.
I think they'd probably keep him if he did that, Brad.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. They'd buy him a beer.
All right, we'll move Nick Sirianni down to tier 2. So it sounds it needs to watch their back. Would be very interesting. I think Nick Sirianni, I don't know, even though he's got his problems, he'd probably get picked up pretty quickly by another team. So that's the other thing you have to start thinking about in that situation as well. Okay. Tier 2 needs to watch their back. Bill is out there. Dave Canales of the Carolina Panthers, Kevin Stefanski, Cleveland Browns, Antonio Pierce, Las Vegas Raiders. That's starting on those three.
I frankly, I disagree with all three of them.
Yeah, in what way, Brad? Let's go.
Yeah, all right. So I feel like Canales, I would probably put him up in, at least for this season, into next, even though it is Carolina, so you got to take it a little bit with a grain of salt. But I think he's secure simply because it's not his quarterback. It's his first year, and because they have started to see some improvement now that we've put the quarterback has had his rest, and he's starting to improve a little bit. So I would actually make him more secure. The other two, Stefanski and who was the other one?
Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, I would probably say they're in the next tier down, the getting warmer tier.
Really?
Personally, yeah, I just think even though Stefanski, it's not necessarily his problem because with Watson, there's going to be such an outcry, I think, for something to change, and you can't get rid of Watson. So what do? You change the coach. Now, I don't think that's the right thing to do. I just think that's just how the NFL operates. So
what I would say about Stefanski, and the reason I had him at 2 because obviously he's not safe. There's no way he's absolutely safe. Mm-hmm. But the only reason I didn't have him lower was because Stefanski's out, or his scapegoat, as it would be, is going to be a defensive coordinator for sure. I think that you're going to see a coordinator change before you see Kevin Stefanski out. So whether it be within the next, I don't think it'll be before the end of the season because I think they'll just write it out what they're doing now. But I think at the end of the season we'll see a coordinator change, which will buy him some time, and then if it still doesn't work out, especially with the Watson injury, because ownership was so in on Watson and pushing that whole narrative, when he comes back, if they still don't succeed, they still look as pedestrian as they were early in the season when Watson was starting, that's when I think that'll be Stefanski will be like, we'll see him gone as the first head coach in 2025, essentially.
He's at least safe for this year, though.
Yeah, and that's
going
where I was
into
getting
next
at.
season.
I think he's at a 2 because I don't think he's completely safe. I think if that team totally implodes, doesn't look like they can function at all over the next 4 or 5 games, then yeah, I don't think he saves himself at that point. But the fact that the offense looks better because of an OC change, and he sort of removed himself from that play calling bit. And now it's the defense, which is supposed to be good. We all said that their defense was going to be amazing this season, but they've just not been at all. They haven't functioned. So there has to be something there. And I think if he had another option for a defensive coordinator in-house, he probably would have changed that by now as well.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Brad with the Canales one as well. Like, looking through the list today of the NFL coaches, any first-year coach I've got as safe as houses.
Yeah, okay. I'm cool with the Dave Canales one. The only reason he was there was because of David Tepper, really. It's the Tepper effect was put him down because you just don't know what David Tepper's going to do.
This is true.
So
the only first-year coach that I had not as safe as houses was Pierce in Las Vegas.
Okay. Yep.
So
what was your thought or reasoning behind Pierce?
They're just not playing well, and they got he got the deal last year on the back of playing well in the back end of the season. So they thought he was going to be the guy, but I just don't think he is.
And he's sort of come into it. He's got much of a defeatist mindset now. Like, he came out not too long ago and said we're the worst team in the league, pretty much. So it sounds like himself is, he's defeated. But most people would have seen this writing on the wall start of the year. Like, how many people had the Raiders winning more than 6 games, even 5 games? Like, they didn't have the talent. Offensively, they were shambles. So it was never going to happen.
Yeah, I think anytime, when a coach clears out his staff mid-season, which, what he did, firing Luke Getsy, and he brings in Norv Turner, Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator from the Dallas Cowboys, Norv Turner. Thank you very much. That was only 30 years ago. Yeah. So I don't think that's a good that says that you're not that secure. And apparently there was reports that the players had a meeting and they called the coaches out in this meeting. So now I don't know if that was prior to Getsy getting fired or after. I would assume it would have been before, and then some changes were made. But just anytime you have stuff like that leaking out, that if players are calling out the coaches, if a coach loses the locker room, and Pierce is a former player, so he knows what it's like, and he knows how those locker rooms work. Yeah, but it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign.
Interestingly enough, we are now just over 12 months past when Antonio Pierce first took over as head coach of the Raiders.
Okay.
And of course, he won his first game out, which was against the Giants. The Giants were terrible last year as well. We all saw that. We are basically about 3 weeks out from their first. The Raiders when they recorded their first ever win over the Kansas City Chiefs since 2020, which, funnily enough, this week they're playing against the Kansas City Chiefs. So,
there you go.
And
There you go.
That was, yeah.
Yeah, well, they haven't done themselves any favors with the quarterback situation. So, yeah.
I think there was some bad choices there, and as you say, sort of moved. So, all right, so what I want to get from that is we're going to move Dave Canales up to Fort Knox. Stefanski, we're going to keep him where he is at 2.
Yep.
And we're going to drop Antonio Pierce down to getting warm. End of season results might determine the outcome. Is that right?
I would agree with that.
Yep.
Righto. Everyone good with that?
I think you're going to have to, yeah.
Okay. The next 3 in that second tier, because there's 3 more there. And I know we're going to have some discussion about these 3 as well. So this is a little bit why I did it, but there was reasons. Kyle Shanahan, Todd Bowles, Brian Callahan.
Brian Callahan.
Let's cover off Brian Callahan of the Titans first.
Really? That's strange. No, that's one I would have thought would have been safe, to be honest.
Yeah, and look, when I did it preemptively, I'll give you my reasoning first, was essentially that we knew the offense was going to be a let's try things and see, especially with Will Levis. But the defense they signed some guys, a lot of guys on defense, and stocked up, so it should have been better. And now they're sitting at 3-8, so they haven't even been winning defensively, essentially.
Well, to be fair, defensively they haven't been horrendous.
But again, as Isaac pointed out, he's still a first-year coach, so there is kind of like you have to give him a little bit of leeway.
Yeah,
I'd be moving him back. I'd be moving him back more so because you know what do they have at quarterback? You know, they're not sure about Will Levis if they're going to draft the quarterback or they're not. You can't. Nah. I'd be moving him back to Fort Knox.
All right, we'll move Brian Callahan back up to Fort Knox. Todd Bowles.
He's safe.
Yeah. So
Isaac, yeah.
Well, I was just say just for our listeners' sake, because they might not be quite as fanatical. Do you have the team names of them, just of the coaches who they're coaching?
Yeah. Todd Bowles of the Buccaneers.
Yep.
And Brian Callahan's the Titans.
Yeah. So to me, Bowles. Yeah, actually, the more I think about it, the more I would leave him there. I just think that they have gotten a lot out of Baker, and it feels like despite the injuries, that team is just balling out. Even though they haven't coming away with a win every time, they seem to leave it all out on the field. Like they embody kind of Baker's whole attitude. So I just think when that happens, coaches are safe. Generally speaking, because players are playing hard, and they have to respect the coach, I think, to play that hard as a unit.
Yeah, so I think he's safe just due to the fact that last week I did some research for the show, and the Bucks' record was three and something, and I thought they would have been at least 5 and 6. That they've been playing really well, so I don't think they're team reflects their record at the moment, and their two best wide receivers are out as well.
Yeah.
So that doesn't help.
Yeah.
And when Mike Evans is in the lineup, they're a good team and they win games.
And their run home is pretty soft too. So the
Yeah.
division isn't like out of touch because the Falcons this week are going to play the Chargers. So that they could be on the ropes with that too. But like their run home, they've got the Panthers this week. Then they play the Raiders at home. Then they do play the Chargers in LA. That's their really only hard game for the rest of the year. Then at Dallas, and then to finish off with Carolina and New Orleans at home. So it definitely could be a wildcard team too.
I get that, yeah. And so essentially, like last season, the Bucks and Baker played amazing in the first year of Baker. They essentially re-signed the entire team again, and it was the same team, almost the same team that they played with Tom Brady in his last season as well. So they've re-signed him, had him for 3 years. This is their softest schedule in about 5 years, and they're doing it the hard way. And a lot of the losses haven't come about because of the playing group. They've come about because of boneheaded decisions by a head coach and like a reluctance to go for the kill. Like he goes for the safe option constantly, and that's what can sometimes bite him in the ass. We talked about it a few weeks ago when they didn't go for the kill against the Chiefs. When they should have just gone for the big points and then just made the Chiefs come back at them, but they sort of left the door pretty much wide open. So that's kind of why tier 2, not tier 1. And it's just more of the talk was he's been there a while. It hasn't really been working since just that one Tom Brady year. Even the last year of Tom Brady was woeful. And
To be fair though, their schedule I don't think was that sort of soft. I mean, it sort of looks that way because of the division that they're in. But like the divisions that they face the NFC East, and then they face the AFC West, and then there are a few random teams. So they had the Lions, who they actually beat, the only team to beat the Lions, might I say. Then they also had the Ravens as well as one of the random teams. So they got a first place schedule as well. So they've played some tough teams, but I think it's more so because the division's sort of soft. So that run home, like if they win out from here, then they probably win the division. Yeah,
they could potentially get to first place. I think within the next 2 weeks, depending on what the Falcons do. So we'll talk about that a bit later. But all right, do you want to keep him at 2? We'll just keep him there for now. And
Yep.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay.
The last one in that tier, Kyle Shanahan.
Oh, Nick.
Is this what I want them to do, or is this what actually will happen?
Okay, so the only theory I had, and it's one that I threw out with Taylor on our reaction show earlier in the week, was he's been there for 8 years. You've only really gotten to, I think, 3 NFC championships, lost one, won 2. So essentially every time you get there, you're pretty much winning. I think it was 3, Nick. It might have been 4. 4. Yeah. So you've lost 2 and you've won 2. You haven't won a Super Bowl yet. And objectively, every year that you've done well, you've had a superstar roster. But the bad years haven't been like 500 years. They haven't been like 8 and 9. They haven't been, like you're not an 8 or a 9 or a 10 win team. You're a 2 or a 3 win team. So it's like good or bad, and that's where it is. And it's just like 8 years down the track, do you maybe look at some kind of change? There has to be some kind of change. I haven't had him lower than this because the reality is he is a phenomenal coach and his pedigree is amazing. And you have to look at it also from the standpoint of if you got rid of Kyle Shanahan, he would be picked up in an instant by another team and they would likely be championship contenders.
I understand the analysis that you're trying to make, but I more so have the view, not so much looking at the bottom end. I'm not so much worried more so about that. More so towards the top end of what's happened when we've gotten that close. Now, I could be here for countless countless cases of big games where things have gone wrong, and a lot of people would point to, oh, it's luck, it's this, it's that, it's the overthrow, it's the special teams and that. But there's a lot of things that you watch in these games, and you pick it out. Stuff that you go against what works and everything like that. On top of this, we're now been through, this is our 5th different starting quarterback. We still don't know if this is a long-term guy. He's got issues with his throwing arm again, Brock Purdy. So now it's like, whoa, we're not going to give $60 million a year to a guy that's, that arm, his throwing arm is no good. We're an old, expensive team now. It's just been a year of where a lot of things have been exposed. I feel like his superpowers of his play calling isn't what they used to be, because a lot of the league runs most of the stuff that he has. You look at Kevin O'Connell, you look at Sean McVay, you look at Kevin Stefanski. A lot more guys actually run similar schemes to what he does. So it's not, this new magical thing it's anymore that he's got. So I look at it this way. When people do, amp up about, he's been such a great coach and everything like that, I'll put this out to you, to the neutrals. Look at the rosters that we have, and we have had constantly. Oh, the best roster, the best defense, the best weapons, the best this.
Yeah.
So why isn't this a case of he can't get it done? If he had a squad like, for example, look at a squad like, if he was managing the Chiefs right now, would we be in the same spot? The Chiefs be in the same spot? I'm not so sure they would be. I'm not so sure that they would be playing in Super Bowls.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if that's a fair comparison, because you're comparing him to Andy Reid, who arguably is a top 10 all-time coach.
I'll give you another one. What about if he was coaching the Rams? Do the Rams win the Super Bowl with him? I don't think they do.
No, I would agree with you there. I'd take McVay over Shanahan personally.
So what about if he was coaching the Eagles team a couple of years ago or this year? Do they win the Super Bowl?
I probably think they do on that one.
Even with Shane Steichen there?
All this, though, I mean, they essentially... Well, let me ask you this. Would the conversation be different if they had won the Super Bowl last year? Because really, they only lost it on... so they only lost it on one play.
But this is my point from earlier. It has been a series and a collections of plays, and it's deeper than just the one plays.
Okay.
I'll give you examples. So I'll give you the examples. I won't delve deeply into them, okay? Raheem Mostert averaged 5.5 yards a carry. 2 weeks before, averaged almost 10 yards a carry against the Packers. They went away from that. They gave Jimmy the ball. Kyle made an emphasis on, we're going to make Jimmy look better because he was playing so good in the game. They got out of hand. The Chiefs came back and they won. Fast forward to the conference title game against the Rams. Now, against the Rams, you could say, Jacoski Tart dropped the interception, which he did. But again, they went away from running the ball. Elijah Mitchell had a solid day. It wasn't that great at the time. But then they gave the ball to Jimmy Garoppolo. Debo, again, had been such a focal point that whole year, and they couldn't get him the ball that well. Now, the Eagles Super Bowl, the Eagles title game, write that off. That's fine, whatever, that's the injury. Then we look at last year. Okay, so there's a number of things. They didn't get Ayuk enough looks. They didn't get Kittle enough looks. They relied heavily on McCaffrey, and in that period between when the Chiefs were giving us back the ball, so with that interception and that fumble, they went pass, all this short stuff, and then went 3 and out. That let the Chiefs back into the game. So it's not just about the one play. So you can look at the play and go, it's the special teams that come off his Achilles or whatever. The fumble at the goal line. and all that, which is very true. But what people forget about that game is every single player that got asked about the overtime rules. Oh, we didn't know the change in the rules. We thought that, the first touchdown wins. We didn't know that both teams were getting if you score the touchdown, then the next team gets it. They were totally unaware. That's coaching. How can you not during the week, go through and practice that?
Yeah,
All
that's
right,
kind of inexcusable.
See, are you saying he's okay? Like you were keeping him at this tier that needs to watch, watch it back.
Getting warmer.
Yeah, I'd say Nick's saying he's more on the hot seat.
What do you two? What do you two think, Isaac? What do you think?
I just think you're starting to hear more and more bad stuff coming out about Shanahan, so I think he's getting warmer.
This season, I don't think he's on the hot seat. I can understand your guys' point. I think that comes next season. I think that O line, and we spent a lot of time on it already. I don't want this to turn into 49er talk, but that O line is aging. Wouldn't you agree, Nick? And next year it's going to be.
And that's also been neglected by Shanahan as well. He came out last season and he said, "Look, at the end of the day, if we've got a skill position guy, and we've got someone that plays on the offensive line, we're gonna take the skill position guy."
Yep.
You look at Jim Harbaugh. He had the option to go get Brian Thomas. Nah, go get Joel. Priorities, Brad. You should know this. As you
all about the linemen.
Exactly. Now look at the Chargers. They got that everyone thought last year no good. Now Jim Harbaugh draft O line. It could be a wild card team. Look at that turnaround.
Yeah. Well, let's keep him at 2 for now. I know Nick wants to go 3, but the rest of us are still saying let's keep him at 2, getting warmer. And as Brad rightly pointed out, it could be, we'll see what happens towards the end of the season, and maybe when we do this exercise, maybe we might do it early next season and he might be at a tier lower. All right, that tier lower, there's only a couple of guys there. So getting warm, the end of season results might depend on what happens to their future. Matt Eberflus of the Bears and Zach Taylor of the Bengals.
Oh, they're in my opinion, Eberflus is out the door. I know they've had a lot of close games, but I just can't see him pulling back from this. I just think it's been a disappointment the way they've handled it and everything. Unless they go on a run here, and this is a rare case where him shaking up that coaching staff has helped a lot. But I just think there's too much bad will there. I think he is out the door, personally. So I don't know. What do you guys think on Pierce?
Eberflus.
Pierce. I was going to
sorry.
say
Eberflus. Sorry.
Yeah. I feel like I do lean towards a sign of keeping him at getting warmer, only because, like you said, there's been a lot of close games.
Yeah.
They've had a whole mishap of, what is Caleb Williams going to be? He started out, a bit slow, then he had a good patch, and then, he slowed down a bit. They told him to, sort of pull it back a bit. Then they got rid of Waldron, and it looks like he's playing a lot more fluently. He's got a bit more going on about. So, I don't know. I feel like if they end the season with, let's say, 7 wins, would you sack him? I suppose in this case I would say it sort of depends on who's out there.
And that's more why he's in this tier for me. It's really what happens at the end by the end of the season. If they don't win another game from here and they're only a 4-win team, and Caleb looks bad again, then I don't see him staying around.
He's boned. He's gone. He's out.
What?
Really?
He's gone. You put a line through him now. I think they're going to circle back to Ben Johnson, and Ben Johnson will be there next year.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
I hope not. I hope, because I want Ben at the Cowboys. But yeah, okay.
So, what do you think?
I don't think Ben is going to the Cowboys. No, he's
not.
We'll get
Deion
to
Sanders
talk about Mike McCarthy in a sec. I'll tell you what's happening there.
Brad, you're saying move him down?
I am, yeah.
Nick, you happy to move him down?
To totally boned.
Yeah.
I'll be outvoted. I don't mind either way. I feel like getting warm is probably all right, but if you're totally boned, yeah, okay. Fair enough. I can see the
'Cause
both sides of the coin. I'm a fence sitter here.
We'll move him down one. Zach Taylor. The only reason that Zach Taylor, I can't move him anywhere from here. That the defense has been abhorrent. They just
Yeah.
the only reason the offense has been amazing statistically. I think one of the best, the top 3 in the league. And the only reason they're having to perform that way is because their defense has been so bad. But even Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase haven't been able to overcome how bad their defense has been. And I think that's why he sits at this tier. I don't think he's completely boned, or totally boned, because of how good that offense is playing and that they are a unit, and you can see it is just whatever is happening on defense, and they need to make a change. So
Yeah, I personally agree with all that and say keep him there.
right,
Yeah.
let's keep him at 3, and let's get on
Yep.
to that bottom tier. All right, let's start with the obvious ones. We started the year at the New Orleans Saints with Dennis Allen. He's already out the door. New York Jets
Yep.
started with Robert Saleh. He's already out the door. Darren Rizzi, Jeff Ulbrich as interim head coaches. The likelihood as an interim head coach is you're not going to get the gig, so they're going to stay. So technically they're in this tier because they're already going to be looking for another coach. I mean, the Jets have already hired a whole independent team to help them look for their new GM and then coach. So we know that Jeff Ulbrich isn't getting that gig. I can't imagine Darren Rizzi gets the gig at the New Orleans Saints. I think he'll end up back coaching somewhere else as an assistant head coach. He probably won't go back to special teams, but it'll be something different. So that's those two. They're the obvious ones. Brian Daboll of New York Giants.
Gone.
There's no way that man can keep his job. I can't see it. It's been failure after failure after failure this season. It's just so bad. On the field, off the field, it's just been terrible. There has to be a scapegoat somewhere for that team. And I think both GM and coach are going to be nixed.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. There's no hope. He's boned. He's beyond boned. He's a boner. So
It's a boner. All right, perfect. Oh my God, Brad, thank you. I know we're trying to stop getting so many sound drops from Brad, so many.
Sorry.
But you just keep going, Brad. Doug Peterson, Jacksonville Jaguars.
Gone.
yeah,
He's gone. He has to be because he's completely. I mean, he's not as bad as Urban Meyer. Let's give him that. But,
no, dude won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, he won a Super Bowl, but it has been a total failure there so far. Yeah, it was a bit of light last year. I think he had a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and it's just gone downhill this season.
I would say it was 2 years ago when they made the playoffs, and then they boned themselves in the playoffs. You know,
and I have heard a lot on the grapevine out there on X and in a lot of NFL circles. I've read a lot of stuff lately and heard a lot of stuff that it seems like they might be getting a Hall of Fame, potential Hall of Fame coach there next season to lead Trevor and potentially pick up the 16 wins he needs to break a record. So it seems like Bill Belichick might be on the horizon for the Jaguars, and it may even already be pretty much a done deal.
I think that's I hadn't heard that, but you know me, I'm not really on X. I think that's a great fit. I really do. If Bill's willing to do it, because they've got some decent draft capital, they've got some salary cap room. It depends on how much control Khan's willing to give him. So and Khan knows what I like about Khan is that he knows he's not a football guy, and so he hires football people. And unlike some other owners in the NFL,
Which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, sorry, Isaac, go.
No, I was just laughing at we'll talk about it in a minute.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I think that's what it'll be. What'll be the really interesting... Obviously, Bill is an amazing defensive coach. So they've got a really good defense that just aren't performing as well as they should. I think he'll unlock a lot of potential there. I'd love to see who he would bring in as an offensive coach or coordinator.
McDaniel. He'll bring in McDaniel.
He might do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I heard people throw at Rex Ryan at one point. He might get a bit.
Sweet Moses.
Might get the band back together.
Jeez.
I don't think
they're gonna have John the Baptist as his offensive coordinator.
I don't think he'll go the dual role again.
Matt Patricia, you know.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, Lions fans go, yes, bring back Patricia.
Yeah. It'll be someone who no doubt will really work with Trevor. So
I reckon there's more of a chance if Bill actually goes anywhere now that it could be the Giants, because he's very set up in New York. He's got all of his family there. He still loves like the Giants from when he was
when he was
a
there,
coordinator, winning Super Bowls back when Lawrence Taylor was
playing. I think and I could see that because they would probably give him ultimate control,
and everything kind of comes full circle.
Yeah,
and that's what he's after, though, and that's what he's after.
Well, no, from what everyone said, the record means a lot to him, and he probably wants to just get the record and then just book it. So. Yeah, I think
that's going to happen in Jacksonville. It ain't going to happen in New York.
That's right, and I think he'll be picking the best opportunity. He can win 16 games in 2 years or 2.5 years. Just the quickest amount of time possible, and see you later.
If he gets to decide on the quarterback, could it be the Jets?
I don't think so. No, because I don't think he'll get enough control at the Jets, and I think he knows that.
I think he knows Woody Johnson's an idiot, so he would stay. Although he's friends with Jerry Jones, so that's his character is tested there.
Well, because
Woody Johnson's going away. He's part of Trump's administration, so it's going to be handed to his brother.
Apparently not. But
what?
Yeah, apparently not. There's a really weird thing that happened this week where Woody Johnson hired the internet group, the 33rd Team, which is founded by former Jets GM Mike Tannenbaum, and also includes Rick Spielman, former GM of the Vikings, to lead the way in helping choose the next GM for the Jets, and then the coach, obviously, in turn for that. And that's where I go, Woody Johnson is an idiot, because it's either Mike Tannenbaum or Rick Spielman. Either one of those two should be your GM to pull you out of this nonsense. That's pretty much where it should be. Yeah. Don't hire them to look for another GM. One of those two are your fucking GM. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Jets. Classic.
So it's nonsense. So, all right, Brad, let's talk about him. Mike McCarthy, Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, so he's well. If you listen to Jerry Jones, the guy's in line for an extension,
apparently,
and not a penile one. So it's just, I don't get it. I don't. Yeah. The Austin Powers penis pump 2000. Sorry. I just do not get it, what they're doing with him. So I think he's a good coach. I really do, but I think it's time for a change in Dallas. I shouldn't say a good coach. He does good things. He runs a very well organized program. He's good at a lot of analytics stuff, but everybody has a time. And everything is a cycle, and I think it's his cycle. He's made him really relevant for the regular season, but the reality is hasn't won any more playoff games than Jason Garrett. So, and why did we fire Jason Garrett? Because he couldn't get it done. Mike McCarthy can't get it done. So
can't get it up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's time to move on. It really is, and nobody can convince me otherwise.
Brad, who do you, apart from Bill Belichick, who do you want as a head coach?
Oh, I would. Well, I mean, that's available. Vrabel. Vrabel.
Yeah, I knew you'd say Vrabel. He
Yeah.
would, how perfect would Vrabel be with
Oh,
some of that
absolutely.
team?
He's exactly what the team needs. He needs a hard ass to come in there and say, no, this is how we're going to do it. And he's going to hold people accountable. And he's just going to, just get up in their face and really kind of he's like Dan Campbell. And I think that is exactly what the Cowboys need. They need attitude. They need a little bit of toughness in them. So bring some of his guys in, get a running back, and find the next Derrick Henry. That's easier said than done. And run it.
Rico
Because if
Dowd.
you're dependent on Dak to be this Patrick Mahomes style quarterback who's going to lead it, it's not going to happen. So,
Do you know where I actually think Vrabel ends up?
New York.
well, he very well could be Cleveland because he's there now.
Cleveland,
But
the Browns.
yeah,
Because
Yeah.
he started the year in this advisory position, and in interviews he said, "I'm not into doing the game day coaching or being on the field or even having a headset on. Don't want any of it." And slowly, since the OC change, actually, all of a sudden he's on the field. He's got a headset on. He's talking to the guys. Like, I think Brown's ownership starts looking around and go, that dude right there, that's the guy I actually want as my head coach, not this idiot. So,
yeah.
So
No, I would love Vrabel for the Cowboys just because of the attitude and all that. Ben Johnson would be the flashy hire, but I'd prefer Vrabel just because like every reason I said.
all right.
just listening
Yes.
to you guys before about Belichick. If he wants to get that record, I reckon the best place he goes to is Dallas. Like, they've got the most weapons. Defensively, they should be better. So if he can get that defense up to scratch, I think that's his best chance to go somewhere and get those 16 wins and then fly off into the
And, and Jerry would love that in terms of just having him get the record, but I just don't know if Jerry would do it because of the control issue. Just purely for that reason.
All right.
I think
We got to move on. We got to move on, Nick. Our 20-minute head coach hot seat talk chat has ended up at 47 minutes.
Jeez.
So we've
It's going
done
to be
well.
the quickest game previews ever.
They can't be though. That's the best part, Brad. All right. Let's move on to game previews. Let's churn through this, shall we? Because lettuce. What else do you want on your sandwich? Righto. Let's kick it off with.
I'll provide the buns. You guys give me the meat. Sorry.
The Pittsburgh Steelers head into Cincinnati this week after a disappointing loss to the Cleveland Browns in a Disney-like snow game. The 8-3 Steelers have shown a lot of resilience this season, leaning heavily on their defense, as all Michael Tomlin-led teams do. But after an odd performance by Russell Wilson and their offense, they'll need to try and find some mojo to continue their winning ways. This matchup against the 4-7 Bengals is truly an odd one. The Bengals have been the offense of the league this season, amazing astronomical numbers whilst trying to overcome their clear flaw in their defensive side of the ball. It's going to be interesting how that explosive Burrow-led offense shapes up against a defense every bit as stubborn as Mike Tomlin. Brad, the battlefield for this game is the Bengals offense versus the Steelers defense, but it's the opposite sides of the ball on each side where the game could truly be won or lost.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's weird to have a team that has 4 less wins be the favorite in this game. So Cincinnati's having to give 2.5 points or 3 points, I think, on this matchup. And you hit the nail on the head. It's the offense, Cincy offense versus Pittsburgh D. The Pittsburgh D has been slipping as of late, especially because of injuries and what have you. But their pressure rate has really decreased quite a bit. They're 18th in pressure rate, where they were top 5, top 10. So that started to fall off. as well, and their run defense has really fallen off. They're like 28th in run defense. So now that actually, Cincy's run game is not going to threaten anybody. So that's kind of is a neutral. I just think it's going to be one of these close games. It's going to come down to last second, and it could be anybody's game, really. I just think it's going to be a good one. Interdivisional matchup like this, both teams are just going to be going balls to the wall on it. So it'll be fun to watch no matter what.
Yeah, so I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say the Steelers don't win another game this year. So I'll take the Bengals in this one.
Whoa! Hey, you know what, Isaac? The Jets are going to run the table as well. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So they've got the Chiefs, the Ravens, Eagles, Bengals twice, and the Browns, who they just lost to. So there's a good chance that's a pretty tough run home. So there's a good chance.
Yeah, you're right.
Good chance they don't win a game. And Burrow and Chase will just have what it takes to get it done. And the big addition last week for the Bengals was T. Higgins. He's just another option there for Burrow.
They have to win. Pittsburgh has to win one more game because Tomlin, in his deal with the devil, can't have a losing record. They have to win one more game. But I understand what you're saying. They do have a really tough schedule.
They do have a really tough. But surely they're not going to lose to the Browns again. Surely at least they get one against the Bengals. I mean, Joe Burrow, out of everyone in the division, this is the team that he plays against quite well. He's the only team he's actually got a winning record against in the division. Is the Steelers. I still think their defense. I know what you're saying, Brent. I still think their defense is top tier. It's definitely a top tier defense, and it's going to keep them close in all of the games. Probably the Ravens again, maybe even the Eagles. I think more so, this has to be a game where the offense has to start getting a move on, particularly in a game because Cincinnati's defense is atrocious. So they have to find just a kickstart to be able to just start moving and start scoring points because their defense is going to be winning them games for the rest of the year. They have to be putting up points. So it's quite a big game, but I actually think in this spot, I don't mind the Bengals as a field goal favourite. They've come up against quite some tough opponents recently, the Bengals. So I think this is probably a spot. Now, again, Pittsburgh's a tough opponent too, but some high-powered offenses as well. So they've been a lot of shootouts. Whereas I think this time, if their offense is still at a high level, this is a game where they can still put up points, and maybe it's a case of can Pittsburgh win in a boat race, which they probably can't.
Yeah, and here's the one stat that I would give you that is the Bengals, as bad as their defense is, they're the top 6 at eliminating explosive plays. What does Pittsburgh rely on?
Deep ball.
Yeah, is the Warren Moon? Gosh, I can't believe I almost said that. Is the Russell Wilson deep ball? And so again, the Cincy strength is playing, matching up well with that Pittsburgh. So it's going to be a tough one. I wouldn't blame anybody for taking the Bengals at all in this.
Righto. Moving on. The 7-4 LA Chargers head down to Georgia, fighting to stay in playoff contention in the AFC. After a disappointing 30-23 loss last week, where they surprised the Ravens, Jim Harbaugh's team will be looking for more of the same smash-mouth football against the Falcons team, who have been up and down while trying to stay in control of the NFC South. Isaac, this one's for you. The Chargers played well against the Ravens last week, but losing J.K. Dobbins early really stifled their offense. With Dobbins potentially out this week, are Herbert and the rest of the crew up to the task with the Falcons?
Yeah, I just think it's a really important game for both teams here. If the Chargers lose, they are at risk of getting caught in the wild card race, and if the Falcons lose, they're at risk of getting caught by the Bucks in their division, who have Mike Evans back and an easier remaining schedule. But ultimately, I've gone with the Chargers because they've got Justin Herbert.
Dude is playing lights out right now. Herbert is. Chargers as a whole are having some struggles. It was a great game. It was closer than what the score indicated, in my opinion. What concerns me is Atlanta's corners. They didn't play in that Denver game, and you saw how bad they looked. And their corners weren't that great, but when you go from mediocre corners to it's not good. So if their corners can play and they're at home, the thing is that the Chargers are coming off a short week, having to travel across the country, and Atlanta's coming off of a bye, so they've got the rest on this. So all the intangibles lean toward Atlanta. I think Chargers, though, are just so much. They're better coached. They're better prepared. The Harbaugh effect is real. It's just. Hey, and did you guys know that both those coaches were brothers? I mean, because they didn't talk about it hardly at all.
Wow, really, Brad?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If I have to hear one more Harbaugh story,
Well, they did a whole interview with the two brothers.
It was just a little. It was a little too much in my opinion. So it's going to be a good game. I'm a little bit surprised Chargers are only giving up 1.5. If I could move the line, I would take Atlanta. If I could get that line to 3, I'd take Atlanta. I don't know if I'd take them at 1.5 personally.
Yeah, I'd take the Chargers in this spot. I mean, they've been defensively, they've been quite good the whole year. Run defenses will get a lot better. They played the Ravens last week. They gave up 200 yards. Who stops the Ravens with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson these days? So it's pretty much a bit of an anomaly that happened last week. As you said, Brad, they're a lot more they're a much tougher team. I think Atlanta really relies on getting their guys. They've got a lot of talent offensively, but it's more so like a finesse team, a bit like the Dolphins, really.
Just not as good.
Yeah, exactly right. So, even though they are coming across country, which I think is what brings in the line a little bit, and because they are in a bit of a shorter week, I think that's probably why the line is what it is. But I still probably like the Chargers to win by a score. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be quite low. It's got a bit of a 17-13 sort of vibe game. This one.
What I wonder what the point total is on it. I don't know off the top of my head.
The point total for this game?
Yeah.
It is. I've got that here somewhere. Give me a sec, Brad. Sunday. That's exactly what I was about to say, Brad.
48.5.
48.5, yep.
Yeah.
I'll be going the under with that.
Chargers minus 2.5. 48.5 for total.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's just that Atlanta offense. If they can catch fire, then it could be dangerous. I'd probably still lean to the under.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Kyler Murray and the electric Arizona Cardinals are in for a dogfight when they enter US Bank Arena this weekend to take on a high-flying Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings return home on a 4-game win streak, the last 3 on the road, after beating the Chicago Bears in a narrow overtime win last week. The Vikings are gritty and ready to grind out teams when needed, but back in a home stadium filled to the brim with purple and gold, it will no doubt be Justin Jefferson waiting to show out in front of home fans that will lead the home team to victory. The Cardinals came off a narrow 16-6 loss in Seattle where neither team really showed up, boys. But the consistency of the Seahawks kind of saved the day in the end. The Cards' offense can be explosive when they get on song, but Brian Flores' defense is all about game wrecking, so I expect some heavy pass rush, forcing Kyler into scrambles so the Vikings secondary can eat downfield. Nick, can the Cardinals' defense hold Minnesota to enough points to help out their offense, or will the might of Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard have Kyler scrambling for his life?
I think the Cardinals can still put up points. Whether it's going to be enough to be able to win them the game, that much I don't think so. They're going to probably come out this week and be a lot more explosive, sort of offensively. This is a team that can pass the ball around quite well, which is something that the Vikings, they stop and run really well, but then it's quite on the opposite end of the spectrum with in the passing game. So they'll probably look to get, McBride some early touches, Marvin Harrison Jr. some early touches. So just to be able to get him in the feel of the game, Kyler will be able to extend some plays as well. But I think in the end, I don't really like this matchup on the opposite side of the ball for, with the Vikings that can put up, still some big points, and the Cardinals whose defense has been, below average at best in terms of the rest of the league. So I think it's definitely a game where I think the line's at 3.5 or something like that.
Yeah,
I'd
3.5.
probably be taking that with Minnesota for sure in Minnesota.
I actually lean the other way. And here's why I tell you. That Cardinals defense has only given up fewer than 10 points in its last 3 opponents. Seattle scored 16 last week, I know, but they had a pick 6, so, against the offense. And the Arizona that defense has faced the second toughest schedule for opposing offenses. So it's gone up against some really good offenses, and yet it's held its own. And they're ranked, I think, top 10 in the defense, if not top 10, top 12. And so I really think they're sneaky good, and it's going to come down to Kyler and what can he do. Seattle did a fantastic job of penning Kyler in, and I don't know if Minnesota can do that with that front pressure. Seattle's front 4 pressure was unreal. So now I know the whole blitzing thing, and they're going to try and confuse him, but if Kyler can get outside of his spy and scramble, he could have a big running day. And so it's going to be one of these chess matches. And the Vikings defense, I'm just not sold in the sense that, what have they gone up against? Mac Jones, Will Levis, Caleb Williams. So some really inexperienced quarterbacks. If they can go up against, if they can do it against Kyler, this is kind of the litmus test. Then that defense is for real. So it's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I've got to side with Nick on this one. I'm going with the Vikings here. So out of the 6 wins for the Cardinals this year, only one team has had a winning record. All the rest of the teams have had a losing record. So it seems like they come up against a decent team and they struggle to win those games. You seen last week against the Seahawks, they struggled. So, and just Marvin Harrison Jr. He just doesn't have a connection with Kyler. They had the one game against, I think, the Rams where they had 2 big plays at the start of the game, and then that was it. So they're really struggling to find that connection there.
Yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall and know what's going on with those, because he is not impressed at all, really, this season. I'm not sure why.
Boys, we've got a AI game script alert. Now, after our last one, And Nick really got stuck into AI because there's no way it's going to come for our jobs. We can take it with a grain of salt. But it was interesting that this is the second time, only the second time, that AI has thrown out a game script at me. So let's quickly run through a few key things it's thrown out at me. Team stats: total yards for the Vikings 400, Cardinals 350. Passing yards: Sam Darnold completes 25 of 35 with 3 touchdowns and no interceptions, which I don't think adds up against something else. Yeah, no, it does. And Vikings 280 yards. Cardinals, Kyler Murray completes 22 of 30 with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. 120 yards on the ground for the Vikes. Yep. The end result, final score, Minnesota Vikings 31, Arizona Cardinals 20. So we got a game script.
I'm curious to know how that stacks up. I think that's gonna be a little high, personally, points wise.
Well, it's definitely over the total.
Yeah.
It would be fun. 31 to 20. We're talking a 51 point game. That's some fun. Whichever way you look at it. So we're going to have a look. We're going to have to see what that shakes out at in our bets at some point. See what some of those lines look like. Seems like I'm going to end up with a pick the score bet for sure. The last one didn't come off. I would have been stoked if it did, but it didn't. All right, let's move on to our last game preview for this week. It's one of the games of the year, one of a few possible Super Bowl matchups this season. The 9-2 Eagles versus the 8-4 Ravens. Sirianni versus Harbaugh. Jalen versus Lamar. King Henry versus Prince Barkley. Brad, this shapes up to be the game of the season. Both teams are meeting each other as they're hitting their top speed, and we could not have hoped for a better matchup when this game was scheduled at the beginning of the season.
Oh, this could be the game of the year. This could be a Super Bowl preview. This is this is exciting, and the fact that it's on a holiday weekend, I'm stoked. All eyes. This is must-see TV. So if you're a football fan, you got to get in front of this. You know, everybody talks about the Eagles saying the biggest thing is bringing Saquon Barkley. Phooey. The biggest thing is that defense. That's right. I did say phooey. So since that bye week that the Eagles had, only the Lions, believe it or not, have had a better defense. I can't believe that because it's given the Lions and all their injuries. But the Eagles have just been playing lights out, especially compared to last year. The transformation that secondary has had from last season to this season is just phenomenal. So I'm really, really impressed. The Eagles are really good at limiting explosive plays, unlike Baltimore that gives up a lot of explosive plays. I think this is going to come down. See, I think I'm not going to tip my hat to one of my bets, but this is going to be both teams trying to establish the run really early. So if you're a fan of kind of smash mouth football and a little bit more offensive line, defensive line, so Nick and I are just going to be in heaven here. But they're going to try and establish that run. It's going to be that type of a ground and pound type game. I think in the second half, then you'll see it opening up a little bit more. But it's going to be, what's the spread? Eagles are getting 3 points.
Yeah, Eagles are favorites.
Yeah, I'd take the Eagles personally. No, the Eagles are dogs.
No, sorry, Eagles dogs. Yeah, sorry, Ravens. My bad. Sorry.
Yeah, Eagles are 3-point dogs. So I would take the Eagles personally on this. And I'll leave it at that for right now.
3 points. So the Ravens are giving up 3 points. Hang on. Yeah. Let me just check real quick. Lamar Jackson is about, 74-1 against the NFC? So, just a prequel to one of my picks later on, because this has been a repeat.
74-3, I believe, Nick.
Okay, sorry.
That are you for real? Is that his real record?
No. It's like 24-1 or something.
I know he doesn't. No, he's got 3 losses against the NFC. I did hear that stat today and something else.
That's just still that's unreal. That is an unreal stat.
23-3.
There you go. It's close to it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the thing that is going to be interesting is, I think, on both sidelines you're going to have Saquon really hoping that Henry has a big game, and then Henry really hoping that Saquon has a big game, because they both got paid. Well, now it seems like peanuts on the dollar. So now they're just both wanting each other to have big games.
Yeah.
And considering Saquon last week, man, record setting. Both teams are very good against the run defensively, which is going to be interesting this week. Someone is going to let that up. Both got dynamic QBs, both got really good running backs, two guys that are probably competing at the top end for all pro spots, first team all pro spots, and even offensive player of the years. I do know that Baltimore on the back end, they give up a lot of plays. I think it's going to be a lot of it's going to come down to a game where it would be close, but I think what's going to tip the Ravens over, even more so than they usually do against teams in the NFC, I think it's going to come down to sort of coaching decisions. Again, do we fully trust Sirianni in these big games? They haven't really been, quite tested in like a very close game like this for a little bit. They've sort of been cruising along, just sort of aimlessly. I mean, they've had some pretty poor opponents, and then they had a good win last week at LA. So, sort of been cruising along. Baltimore have sort of been through the rigor a bit. They got shocked against Cleveland, then they played Pittsburgh. So, they've had some tough sort of division games as well. They've been in some shootouts. So, I think probably the Ravens are a little bit more steady. And in Baltimore, it's hard enough to play there. It doesn't matter what conference you're in Baltimore, let alone, what the NFC teams are like against Baltimore. So, I'm definitely still going to go with history on my side with going with the Ravens.
Yeah, so when it come down to it this week in previewing this game, I went through a bit of a thing, and I'll just see if you guys can help me out if you agree with me or not. So in the skilled positions on offense, I've got Lamar's better than Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
Yep. Henry and Barkley are pretty much equal, so they rule each other out.
Technically.
Yeah.
No, this season I would agree with that. Yep.
The Eagles receivers are better than the Ravens
Definitely.
receivers.
Okay. Yep.
And then the tight ends, the Ravens, the tight ends, Ravens are better than the Eagles.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're both in the top 10 for rushing defense. What it comes down to is the Eagles have the better receivers, and Baltimore are ranked 29th when against the pass. So that's what it's going to come down to, I believe.
I like your analysis.
But
I think
I see. Regardless of the fact that the Ravens are strong against, strong on the ground for me, against the rush. I think when you've got Saquon Barkley playing the way he does, and the way that offensive line is completely opening chasms for him to run through right now against really good teams, I think they're still going to run on the Ravens. I love the idea that they can also pass, because it does give them a lot of that play option as well, because the Ravens have been bad against that. So it's going to be it's a fascinating matchup. I really like the Eagles here, and I hate myself for saying that, but I don't know. I watched a lot of stuff this week on people talking about and breaking down schemes, and a lot of their big plays and things from last week against the Rams. So yeah, it's I love it. So I'm in on the Eagles, especially with that like that being 3-point dogs. Yeah, I really like that a lot, actually.
And just real quickly to your point, Isaac, I would agree with everything you said, but I would say the caveat to all that is where's the game won and lost? In the trenches. And who do I give the advantage to? I get the defensive line of the Eagles and the offensive line of the Eagles, the way they're playing right now. I just think they're playing lights out. So that's why I'm going Eagles.
Yeah. Ravens, to me, have had just a couple of tough weeks where they shouldn't have had, whereas the Eagles are just like this trajectory is going up. So, and as we said, it could all fall apart postseason. But, yeah, it is what it is. Righto, cool, boys. That's the game previews for this week. That game preview is going to be, that game in particular is going to be phenomenal. No matter which way it shakes out, it will be amazing. So before we get into the segment that everybody waits for on Gday Gridiron every single week, let's just run over some AGN formalities, I guess, because it is Thanksgiving season and that means Christmas season. And what we're saying here at AGN is you should check out our mothership, our Linktree /Aussie Gridiron Network. Of course, you can get all of our links to our socials and every episode ever of this show, Aussie NFL Fantasy Show, Manjot's Pastry Press, where you can see Aussie Gridiron say all of that stuff. You've heard us talk about that ad nauseum. What you can definitely do, though, is find a link for our merch store where you can buy some awesome presents for your friends, your league mates, your family. There's some pretty cool shirt designs all around that merch store. You can get them in stickers, you can get them in shirts, you can get them in hoodies, long sleeves, cups if you want, whatever you want. There's heaps of cool designs that we've put up over there over the years. So make sure you check that out. A lot of kid-friendly G'day Gridiron stuff. So if you love our show, you want something that your kids can wear to support Gridiron in general, go and check that out. Go and get all those sort of cool Australian animal designs that we've got made up by a very awesome friend, Tom. So check all that out. Linktree /Aussie Gridiron Network and support the show because we love having you here and we love all of your support. So we'd love to keep doing it. But it is definitely that time.
We're having a blunt, having a slap, just having some
Bloody
fun,
best
and
bets
making
for
some
week
scratch.
13.
It's a
We
good
know it's been a long ass show so
Bloody
far,
best
and
bets.
thank you for sticking around and sticking with us. But we know this is the fun part. We know that's what everyone's here for. It's to hear us talk about some of the best, some of the stuff that we been looking at, and we're going to be putting some money on this week. So, who wants to kick us off? You know what? Let's go with Nick. He's the guy who's been tracking stuff. Technically, the informed bloke, Brad. Actually, you know what, Brad? Have you got your spreadsheet with you?
Yeah. Well, yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
I've only got it for us for the last
That's all right.
2 weeks.
Brad's been just starting to track our bets a bit, just to see where we are. He's keeping us in check, we can say.
Yeah.
Brad's making sure that we're not just pissing money up against the wall. We're investing wisely and having it come back to us.
That's absolutely. Absolutely.
Where are we at the last couple of weeks, Brad?
So since I started keeping like a detailed inventory of
Inventory. That's a great word for this.
Inventory.
of our picks, like individually. So the last couple weeks we've been about a little less than break even. So we're down I think about 15% just on these last 2 weeks. But you have to look at the totality of our betting.
Our existence?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes. And if you look at our season as a whole, we are doing incredibly well. So we are roughly up 75% on our total bets. So if you're out there listening, we are the real deal. Now, let me just say with that, we all have kind of our different styles, which I find very unique. So Ian's a big swinger. So let me rephrase that.
They swing very low, Brad.
Ian takes big swings. Let me rephrase that. So, and
Do your balls hang low? Do they swing to and fro?
yeah, exactly. So Ian can go 1-4, 2-6, and still turn up with a profit because of his odds are that good. So when he hits big. And then I'm much more of a volume better. So I like to do, in the American parlance, teasers, or otherwise adjusted. What do we call it here? Alternate.
Alternate lines.
Yeah, alternate lines. So I like to do a lot. I do a lot of bets, low risk, alternate lines, multis. So I'm in that, right around that $2, the odds 2-1 betting. And Nick's a little bit of a savant. He's our ringer. So he's good. He's just he knows, he has a really good feel for it. So it's interesting how the three of us have all kind of brought different styles to it. But you can't argue with money. At the end of the day, we're up 75%. So
Yeah. Nick's great on the NBA. So one day when we get that betting podcast off the ground,
that's right.
it'll be all of Nick's NBA picks. That's what's going to take us to the moon, I reckon.
That is exactly right. So we're going to keep that rolling this week.
Go, Brad. Do you want to hit us with yours then, Brad?
Sure.
Do you want to keep us rolling?
Yeah, I would love to. So I've got three of them. One of the games we already talked about. I'm taking the Chargers, and they only have to give 1.5 points. I just think that's too good. It's going to be too close. So that Atlanta, I just think they've got too many weaknesses, and I think it's going to come down to coaching. So I'm taking the Chargers at -1.5. The next game I'm looking at, Seahawks versus Jets. I'm taking the Jets are just, well, as much as I wanted them to succeed, no, it's not going to happen. And that offense is just looking woeful. So, and I think with the Seahawks traveling internationally, having a big game last week against the Cardinals, internationally. Well, if you've been to Seattle, it feels like another country.
It's a long way up there.
Yeah, it's some strange people. Let me tell you that.
It's basically Canada.
Yeah. They wish, and so do I. The Seahawks versus Jets, I'm taking the under at 41.5 on that one.
Fun police.
Yeah, the Fun Police.
Yes, Fun Police is out in full effect, and the Fun Police is doing an encore. So this is the one that I'm feeling really good at. Eagles versus Ravens, and and I'm taking the first half under at 25.5 points.
Jeez.
So, and the reason I'm doing that is for what I talked about earlier. I think both teams are going to come out and try and establish the run. And they're both the Eagles are good at taking away those explosive plays. The Ravens not so good, but I think the Eagles, especially when you are sniffing this close to a record, especially a record that has been standing for 30 years, and it's one of these considered untouchable records. Even though there's more games in this season, so it's a little diluted. Teams are going to go out of their way. They're not going to put the game at risk, but they're going to go out of their way to see if we can get this guy the record. And so I think the Eagles are going to stick with this run game and Barkley as long as they can, as long as he's healthy, because they would love nothing more than to get him that record. And I know every Giants fan is going, yes. So that's my third bet. The first half under 25.5, Eagles versus Ravens.
Right, Nick, you want to hit us for yours?
I'll tell you what, I spoke about this earlier today. I looked at the lines today. Wow. Insane value across the board. I wanted to have it. Last week was so difficult. There was a lot of, you just sort of tried to force it. I was really struggling getting 3 picks. This week I could have gone with 7 or 8. But we'll keep it to 3 this week. So a Thanksgiving Day bet. Miami at Green Bay in that cold, minus 3.5. How bad is Tua in the cold? How bad is this offense when they come up in freezing weather? Pretty atrocious. And I think that line's a little bit closer because the Dolphins have been playing quite good since Tua's been back. He's had some career statistics. With his touchdown interception ratio, his completion percentage, so he's playing quite well. Green Bay had a bye last week, so minus 3.5 with that bye from last week will certainly help them this week at home on Thanksgiving as they're trying to hunt down the Lions. And maybe if Chicago get close to them, who knows? Maybe that might be well and truly back into that hunt with the Vikings as well. Next game, Buffalo, minus 6.5. Brock Purdy's throwing screens, and that's it. Maybe no Trent Williams. Fred Warner's got a fractured ankle. George Kittle's questionable. Nick Bosa's got a bleak injury. I can keep going on and on and on.
They're all suddenly injured.
Everyone's suddenly injured. Everyone's suddenly injured. But more on top of that is that, again, I've said this earlier in the year, when we play dynamic quarterbacks that can, move around and are quite dynamic with their legs, we absolutely suck. So, Josh Allen, and it's going to be a blizzard, even with it being a blizzard up in Buffalo for Sunday Night Football, it won't matter. Minus 6.5, taken with a touchdown. Buffalo will get up. And finally, again, as we mentioned before, Lamar Jackson against the NFC at home against the Eagles. This is definitely going to be a game where I think the Ravens are going to get out earlier. The Eagles have had a soft run. They've played, some pretty lackluster teams that have pumped them up quite a bit. The Cowboys who have been quite poor at home. And then, teams like the Giants and the Bengals and teams like that. Ravens have had a bit more time and tested coming in. I think the Eagles potentially this week, Brandon Graham had a great game last week. I think he's on the injured reserve now. Devontae Smith's questionable. So they've got a few guys that might be out for this week, and there's a few guys defensively for the Eagles. So I think it's going to be a close game, but in the end it'll come down to coaching, and the Ravens will get up by that field goal. So 3 bets, could have been a lot more. I'm going to be spewing if one of them doesn't get up now, but it's going to be a 3-0 week. Book it.
I love it.
Isaac, is there anything you were looking at? I know you're not quite a bettor, and you sort of struggle in this. You don't have to, mate. It's okay. We're not going to pressure. There's no like peer pressure betting here on Gday Gridiron.
No, I'll throw 3 out there, like I did last week.
Yep, try about that then.
So I've got Miami 1-13. I know it's a cold weather game, but they're just hitting their straps. Sorry, Nick. I'd go with Nick's one. He bets more than I do. Burrow to throw 2+ touchdowns, and I'm going to roll with the Panthers, seeing as though they got me one last week, and they'll score first against the Bucks. Could be a field goal, could be a touchdown, but
I love it.
Score first.
I'll score first. We haven't had one of those bets on here.
We are deep in the weeds, aren't we?
I love it.
Links in the bio. Go join our Patreon, Oh, shit.
Patreon coming soon. The Gday Gridiron Patreon coming
That's
soon.
it.
it's not like I'm betting both ways there, Nick.
What's that?
Well,
It's not like I'm betting both ways there. Like, one team will score first. Go the alternate.
Yeah, that's it. I tried that last week. That failed miserably. Yeah.
all right. Let's go with Ian's dogs to wrap this up. Ferguson is out of the Cowboys. Brad, Luke Schoonmaker, over 29.5 yards.
I love it. It's Thanksgiving Day. They always play hard on Thanksgiving Day.
Yep.
I'm picking the Cowboys to win that game, by the way. Yeah, go.
Schoonmaker, over 29.5 yards. And more on Thanksgiving. Kansas City. There are absolutely no lines for Noah Gray. And if anyone has already listened to the fantasy show, for the Friday fantasy show that I hosted, you'll know why I'm banging on about Noah Gray. I think he is the next big tight end for Kansas City. And there's absolutely no lines out there for Noah Gray. I hate it. So, Travis Kelce, under 50.5 yards. So, fun police, but I just don't think Travis Kelce plays that much this week because they're against the Raiders. I think they'll get out pretty quick. And
Pacheco back as well. They'll run the ball.
And I think they'll run the ball. Yeah, I think that it's a great idea bringing Pacheco back for this one because it's a easy game to even snap limit him. Just get him back in. And I think Kelce ends up snap limited if they get ahead. So he won't play. Noah Gray's been amazing. He's had 2 touchdowns each of the last 2 weeks. So I think he is going to be great. And I think Kelce under 50.5 yards is what it'll be. I've got 4 actually because of that. I don't know if that'll come off. But Baker.
Baker! Keep it.
We've been back with my 25.
Keep it going.
With my 250 yards. No, this week, Brad, we're going the Baker Evans stack. Baker Mayfield, 300 plus passing yards and 2 TDs. Mike Evans, 100 plus yards and a TD. One of those TDs going to Mike Evans. Mike Evans is at just over 400 yards in the season. Just like Mike Tomlin sold his soul to the devil to always be over 500. Mike Evans has sold his soul to the devil to always have a minimum 1,000-yard season. They've got 6 weeks to get Mike Evans just under 600 yards. It starts here. Over 100 yards, Mike Evans this week. Baker over 300, 2 TDs. They are going to obliterate the Panthers. And the last one I had, which I was sort of floating around about, I was going with whether or not... No, you know what? I'm not going to put it out there. It's a Vikings one. I'm not going to jinx myself. So let's just stick with those 3. Vikings 31, Cardinals 20. That's what AI said. So we're just going to stick with that one. No, that's not my bet. I'm not putting a bet out there to jinx it. So me sitting here in my Xavier Rhodes shirt. All right. That's best bets for this week. And, of course, as good as we are, as detailed by Brad, the betting information on Gday Gridiron is provided for informational and entertainment purposes only. There are no guarantees that tips we provide will provide success or profit. All sports tips provided are our opinions, and punters are encouraged to use this information in order to form their own opinion about the outcome of a sporting event. Bet at your own risk and always consider what you could lose before placing a bet.
Don't worry, Ian, there's plenty of income coming out of these bets this week.
I love it.
Non-taxable either.
Fingers crossed. Boys, first ever G'day Gridiron 4-box. Absolutely loved it. We've punched over the hour and a half mark, so we should probably get out of here quick. Thank you to everyone else for joining us for this insanity every single week. And we hope you keep coming back for many more because these shows are just getting better and better. As I said earlier, check out the Linktree /Aussie Gridiron Network. Check out all the other boys. Check into the merch store. Buy some presents for people for Christmas. They're all pretty inexpensive, under $20 usually for a shirt. So just go and check all that stuff out. On behalf of myself, Isaac, Brad, and Nick, all of G'day Gridiron, thank you very much for joining us, and we will catch you on the other side of Thanksgiving weekend and Week 13. See you later.
The G'day Gridiron podcast is brought to you by the Aussie Gridiron Network, a network of Australian podcasts bringing the fun and a little bit of the Aussie larrikin to the NFL and fantasy football. Check out our other amazing productions. Australia's #1 fantasy football podcast, the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show. Everything about the local game at Aussie Gridiron today. Manjot's Pastry Press on Instagram and YouTube, and Australia's very own Dynasty podcast, No Huddle Dynasty. Find links to everything at Linktree /Aussie Gridiron Network.